Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, Torah students. Welcome. This is week 5 of our masterclass series. I am with Dr. Ananya Harvey. She is an integrated sexuality and relationship coach. And we're going to be talking about non-ejaculatory full body orgasms for men and their partners who wish to support them. So this is really exciting because it's something that I've been just delving into a little bit in the last year. And we're going to take my game to the next level today. And hopefully you guys can join us. Feel free, if you're in a place, whether you're watching this now or watching this later, feel free to actually join in the exercise. So I'll be laying down on this bed, and Dr. Ananya is going to walk me through some breathwork exercises, and she's got essentially like a structure of 5 steps that she's going to be going through, and then she'll be hopefully maybe sharing those highlights with us during or after the class. And that's pretty much it. I just want to make sure that for those that don't know you, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, totally. So, hi everyone. And I actually have a PhD in organic chemistry. And yeah, so, I went from studying bonding on the molecular level to studying bonding on the interpersonal level.
Very cool.
And, yeah, so after 10 years as an academic research chemist, I left my career because I just wasn't having satisfying relationships or sex. I had never received any education about how to have a healthy personal life. And I went on a mission to say yes to everything that scared me. In the course of that, I ended up spending 4 years at a yoga tantra school in Asia, studying classical tantric non-dual philosophy, hatha yoga, kundalini, and neo-tantric sexuality.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was full time. I was fully practicing, embodying, and studying this for 4 years. And then I got my coaching certification in a year-long program with a teacher in the West, Layla Martin, who's just doing phenomenal work in the area of sexuality and spirituality. Yeah. So, and then I launched my business to the surprise of everyone, including myself, switching from an organic chemist to integrated sexuality.
What did mom and dad think about that?
Well, it was terrifying.
It was terrifying.
But I will say that my 96-year-old grandfather, who was Baptist, called me and said, "You know what? You're helping people. I support you."
Wow. Wow. You got a lot of it's almost like the oldest ones and the youngest ones get it. The rest of us in the middle are all messed up. Because when they're older, they've seen enough, and when they're younger, they just haven't been, exposed to the BS. So they get things that are raw level. All right, good. So we've got, I think, Ashley and Leah. Hi, guys. I'm so happy you're both joining us.
Hi.
We're going to get started. So I guess what we want to do is talk about why would a man, because this is what we're talking about here, why would a man want to have to not ejaculate and still have an orgasm, which is supposed to be a full body orgasm? First of all, how and why? Well, maybe the why first, the how later.
Yeah, so those are some really great questions. So what I want to talk to you guys about today is what this is, like how does it actually work in your body and your brain, why it's not only just a neat trick, but it's actually important for your whole life, how exactly to do it, and how your partner can support you. So one of the reasons why a man would want to do this is it means that you can have orgasms, but stay hard and keep having sex for as long as you want until the end of time, essentially. So that's one reason. Another reason is that the experience that we've all been taught that men can have about sex is so narrow. It's basically just using a tiny fraction of your potential to feel pleasure, to feel connection, to feel masterful at sex. And it's really selling you guys short. The last reason I would say is that for me as a woman, when I started having sex with men who practice non-ejaculatory orgasm, it completely changed my life and gave me permission as a woman to fully, to change from goal orientation, to change from getting my sense of self-worth from his ejaculation, to going fully and deeply into my pleasure and discovering new kinds of orgasm for me, and finding really deep connection in my partnership. I will also say one other reason is that when in partnership, I mean, it can be heterosexual, homosexual, whatever it is, when your partner isn't ejaculating all the time, there is an extra frisson, an extra like magnetism between the two of you that really changes the energy in a relationship in such a helpful way. So this is one more thing too I will say is that I find this practice like so nerdy. I think it makes sex fascinating and just like such like a science experiment. So those are some reasons why.
Those are all great reasons. I don't have much to add to that. From my experience, certainly, like you said, being able to just basically last longer is something that is important, because for most of us, it's always felt like there's a tragic mismatch, because women, for them to reach their ecstasy, it's not going to take 5, 10, 15 minutes. It could take 30, 40 minutes for them to really get into their bodies, because they have to surrender. They have to feel safe. And this has been my experience with many women. Men, I mean, I forget what, you probably know the statistic, but isn't there like an average time that's ridiculous, like 2 minutes or 4 minutes for an average man?
It's 3 to 5 minutes.
Insane. That's insane. And we're talking about like probably 3 to 5 minutes of just from start of stroking to the end of stroking. But you know, when people say that they're having sex for hours and hours, you know, you wonder, like, do they know anything about transmuting their energy and full body orgasms? Or are they just like, you know, laying together for an hour and then having sex for 3 minutes?
Yeah, it's such a shame. Like, I had no idea what was possible in my body, how powerful I was, until I started having sex with men who were not driving toward ejaculation. Only then I realized, okay, after 30 minutes, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
And after an hour, that's like the best time, right? And it was only then that I was able to become multi-orgasmic and to really discover different kinds of orgasm for me and find this deeply surrendered, like non-dual, dissolving, merging into oneness place that people talk about. So I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay.
So can I talk about what is going on in your body?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Okay.
I love nerd out. Go ahead.
All right, great. So I am not a medical doctor, so, you know, don't take this as gospel, but this is what I have discovered is likely happening. So basically what goes on for a man when he's in the process of arousal and ejaculation is that the stimulation on the penis signals to the brain, there's lots of pleasure coming. And with enough stimulation, the brain starts to signal to the smooth muscles around the vas deferens, and those start to pump the sperm up from the testicles to the base of the penis. And that pumping is involuntary, and you can't feel it. But once enough sperm gets pumped up to the base of the penis, that's when you feel that, like, oh my God, that urge, that like, this is full, like this is gonna come out sort of feeling. That's the first phase of the ejaculation. Then that's the point of no return. It triggers the muscles around the base of the penis to start contracting really hard. And then that shoots the sperm, which is now semen, out. And it's the contractions of the muscles that shoot the semen out is a reflex governed by the spine. But the feeling, yes. So that just happens based on some neurons near the spine that control that pumping of the muscles. And so, but what actually happens in terms of you being able to feel orgasm is you're feeling that in your brain. It's your brain that lights up, that signals to you that this is orgasm. So you can see right away that these are two separate processes. They aren't the same thing. Medical science and basically everyone on the street conflates orgasm and ejaculation for men, but they can be teased apart. I think what might be familiar to a lot of men is that you can actually, a lot of men have had the experience of ejaculating without having any pleasure at all. Like just the physical mechanical process of ejaculation happens, but the orgasm isn't there. Have you had that?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're just talking about doing the opposite, where you're feeling the orgasm in your brain, but the physical pumping process of shooting the semen out isn't happening.
Understood.
Okay. So hopefully that helps demystify it a little bit.
It's really fascinating because just yesterday I was practicing. I was having a connection with a partner, and I really went to the edge, and I really transmuted my energy, and I was feeling it like just like coming up, so we went to the edge a few times. And then so the day progressed, and this is going to be a big question for you. The day progressed, and somewhere around the evening time, I got my blue balls, which don't always happen, and they're not actually blue balls, but right at the base of my penis, like right at the base, like on a left side in particular, it felt like there was almost like a lump, as if like the semen was just sitting there all day, because it never came out, nor was it dispersed through my body. So maybe, I'm not sure what happened, but maybe I went too far in terms of, like you said, that one part. I'm not sure.
Blue balls usually is caused by the pressure buildup of blood accumulating in the testicles.
Okay.
Because when you start to get turned on, a lot of blood rushes to that part of your body.
Oh.
Yeah. And some men get them and some men don't. And it's not dangerous, and it'll go away eventually. Normally, so I lived in a community for 4 years, like I was talking about, where all the men in this community practiced non-ejaculatory orgasm. They undertook a period of not ejaculating at all. That could have been from weeks to months. And so I interviewed a whole bunch of them about their experiences.
Wow.
Yes. So I learned a lot from them. And basically, they all said that if you practice this regularly, if you practice not ejaculating, but you're still having sex and you're still doing some sort of ecstatic energy moving process regularly, like breath work, intensive vinyasa yoga, qigong, something like that, martial arts that moves the energy through your body, that usually the blue balls should only come for about 2 weeks, and then they won't bother you anymore.
Interesting. I do remember that when I was deep into the practice about a year ago, might already be a year and a half ago, when I was doing it more regularly, they started to go away. It's almost like my body just adapted to it.
Exactly. Your body will adapt. It creates new pathways for the energy, the blood, the sperm to just stop causing so much pressure build up there.
Okay. Good to know.
And they do say that like putting your testicles on ice can help with the pain.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've tried that a couple of times. Hanging on an inversion table. I tried a few things. It seems like one thing that has helped me sometimes is just like doing some breath work, like a box breath.
Yes.
So and I know we're going to be talking about breath work soon, but I'll do like I'll breathe in for 6, and then when I hold for 6, I'll actually suck up that sexual energy as if I'm doing that same exercise. And then I let it out, and then I hold, and I cycle through that, and that makes the pain go away.
Wow, yeah, that's perfect. That's awesome, Shai. That's exactly what I was talking about. Any sort of intentional and repeated, prolonged practice like that, where you're using your breath and your focus and your body to move your sexual energy, is going to help.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what you have to develop is like a baseline level in your body where you're always doing that. Because what we're retraining here is your entire lifetime of your body only knowing how to do one thing with sexual energy, which is to squirt it out in ejaculation. So that's like a really strong habit that you have to break. So it does require some practice and dedication in the beginning of teaching your body, look, here's a different pathway. You can move that energy up instead of moving it out.
Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. So I want to talk about how it might feel to have a non-ejaculatory orgasm. And I will say that there's kind of a difference here. So you can actually have a full body orgasm and ejaculate. And you can have a full body orgasm and not ejaculate. But it's a little bit rare if you're not born with the natural ability that your body is going to learn to do it if you don't stop ejaculating for a little while first.
I see.
So that's why here we're focusing on it as non-ejaculatory orgasm.
What it's felt like to me is almost like there's a channel, right? Almost like that works like with your chakras, and it feels like I opened up a channel.
Yes.
So now my orgasms are so much more powerful, even if I ejaculate. And
yes.
especially if I edge a few times before I actually ejaculate. It's almost like there's a new version of me, like a new wiring or a new tunnel that was created by practicing this.
Yes. Awesome. So what you have to do is, so normally when you're getting stimulated, like I was saying before, the idea is that normally what we're taught is, as a man, you focus all of the pleasure in your cock. But what that does is that signals to your brain to start the process of ejaculation, to start clenching the muscles that move the sperm up. And you don't want that to happen. So when your partner is stimulating you, instead of focusing and concentrating all of that energy just in one part of your body, you have to have a practice of moving it up. And so this might come in the first stages of practice through tensing your muscles and sort of pulling it up on purpose. But there is also a sense of, instead of like contraction and focusing, there's a sense of opening and surrendering and allowing the energy to flow. So it's a paradox, because you kind of have to do both. Like in the beginning, you have to be disciplined about pulling the energy up. So that's a bit of a like pull and a contraction. But you also have to allow it and invite it and sort of surrender into something bigger. I know that might sound confusing right now, but don't worry. We'll get into the step-by-step how to do this in a minute.
Okay.
So I want to talk about, so some of the men that I knew, they wrote to me about what it felt like for them to have a non-ejaculatory orgasm. Because non-ejaculatory orgasm, one of the hardest parts about developing it is recognizing it. It's not a short, sharp peak of pleasure like an ejaculatory orgasm. It is something much more subtle and sublime. So I'm going to read to you what these four of the men said, so that you have an idea of what this is and why it's so awesome.
Okay.
So the first one said, "For me, the orgasm itself wells up from everywhere, almost as if it sneaks up from another place that I don't perceive or know about. When this starts, it's tempting to clutch at it. Don't. My whole body rolls and jolts with energy and just keeps on going. And there seems to be no definite limit to the duration during which I can have sex." So that's man number one. Man number two, "At some point, I lose the sense of time and space, or who I am. I feel expansion, a continuous movement in endless space. I felt this joy of being, this universal love that surrounds me, that feeling that I only felt a few times in deep meditation, and it brings tears to my eyes." So man number three, "I melt, dissolved into waves of pleasure that automatically trigger intense rising of energy. I found myself awakening into numerous experiences of bliss. The more I let go into this state, the more the veils of the ego disappear. And finally, in that mad, wild, and overwhelming ecstasy, I paradoxically truly rest." And then the last one.
Wow.
Yeah. "There is a loss of self, or at least a diminished self, a relaxation, clarity, and lucidity. I feel my senses are heightened, and often my awareness extends well beyond my physical body, definitely into my lover's body, and often much wider." So
that's so yummy. Wow.
So you can see why this is my passion, right? Because it's like, nobody tells you guys that it's possible to feel that way.
Nobody tells us anything. All we get is, hey, I grew up with a VHS tape of pornography, and it's just like, this is what you do. All about the cum shot.
Right. And it's getting worse. Like, so many boys' education is all from pornography.
Yeah, it's so accessible now, and it's so confusing. Yeah.
So there's a whole other world available out there, and it really does exist. I've witnessed so many men have this energy run through their bodies. I never would have believed it myself, but it is possible.
Yeah. I was a non-believer until, and I think the first man that you just read, the idea of the body, everything, like shake, like I tremor and I shake. Like when it moves up my body, my whole body's like, I don't know if you ever heard of trauma release exercises, but it's the same thing. Like my whole body just undulates. It's really amazing.
And do you like it?
I love it.
Okay.
It's amazing. Yes.
Good. So the last point I want to make here before I go into steps is that for me, even though I, witnessed many men go through this and have these kinds of orgasms, waves and waves of pleasure through their body, and we could have sex for hours, I still wanted to know, where did these teachings come from? Like, what is this? Like, is this just some weird parlor trick? It just seemed so strange. And so I started asking a lot of questions and looking around. And it turns out that in the esoteric traditions of many of the world's great spiritual traditions, in like the secret esoteric side, there are these teachings. And if you start asking, you can find it. I've heard from men studying this type of full body orgasm in a Christian tradition.
Really?
Yep. And so I've heard that it exists in many, many places across the world. But one of the most helpful places that it exists is in Tibetan Buddhism. So here we come to the much deeper understanding of why non-ejaculatory orgasm isn't just a cool thing to do, but it's super important for your life. The Tibetan Buddhists were tantric, and so they used sexuality as a form of connecting with the divine, with the truth of who we are, with consciousness, with love. And they considered orgasm to be one of the 4 main states of consciousness. So there was waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and orgasm. And there were meditative spiritual practices to do in each of these states of consciousness. But for some reason, the practices to do during orgasm have always been very, very, very secret. And recently, there was a practitioner who decided to write about it, a teacher. And these practices are called karma mudra. And essentially what these practitioners do is they generate orgasmic energy in the body and then move it through you in a systematic way so that you can explode a feeling of bliss and surrender and emptiness in each of the different chakras. And it's not the bliss like the bliss of taking a drug. It's supposed to be the bliss of our true nature. So it's something much profound and deeper and nourishing and fulfilling. And it's a very serious, very detailed, beautiful practice that has been carried out for at least 1,000 years, probably more. So I personally love knowing that, this has been part of the human experience for a really long time in a really serious way. Not just in a cool, let's do this for fun way, but in like okay, what is the nature of reality? What is the nature of consciousness? How can we connect on a much deeper level to ourselves and to our partner?
Interesting.
Wow.
You're geeking out on this stuff. I love it. It's like rare to find a woman that's so interested in men's orgasms.
Thank you.
It's awesome, and maybe it's also rare for men to be so interested in women's orgasms because there's so much there too. Yeah. Before we start, I just have one last question because I'm geeking out with you.
Okay.
But one time I remember receiving pleasure while hanging on an inversion table. And I specifically remember it helping just through gravity. Is that possible? Because I was upside down and stimulated that the energy moved faster?
Yeah, absolutely.
So is that also related to why some men talk about doing like a headstand in the middle of sex?
Oh yeah.
To get that, so the gravity is a part of this?
Well, sorry, what was your question going to be there?
Because like, is it you're moving energy, so if you're upside down, the energy actually flows down, or is it actually like, what is moving when you're upside down?
So what's happening is that you're training your body on so many different levels. You're training it on the gross physical, like muscular and circulatory level, as well as on the subtle energetic level and the spiritual level, if you want to go there, when you shift from ejaculating to full body orgasm. So one of the easiest ways for men to feel this, and one of the strongest ways for our bodies to start to understand what to do, is like really strong physical movements, whether it's something called Uddiyana Bandha that I teach my clients, or headstand, or hanging upside down. It's all going to help, because again, like everything in your body is trained to move down and push it out at the level of your genitals, right? And you know, if you put your body physically in a new position, that changes the way you think about things.
It seems like maybe like blood flow also is moving like up, and the blood, like it's almost like your blood vessels can be vehicles for that energy. Like everything is connected, right?
Yes, definitely. Yep. And so it's really helpful in the beginning to use your physical body as much as you can. And then later, as you get better at the practice, you can just use your breath, or even just your mind and your intention to move your energy up. But in the beginning, it's like so great to use the body.
I love it. All right. What's next, doctor?
Okay.
Take your time.
So I have 5 key things that need to happen in order for you to start to experience non-ejaculatory orgasm. And the first thing is you have got to be determined. So first you have to just make a decision. I'm going to stop ejaculating until my body develops this kind of orgasm, right? Because you're fighting a lifetime of ingrained habit. All your body knows is ejaculate, ejaculate, ejaculate. And if you never stop that, you're never going to give it a chance to open to something different. And that is why, let me see if I can drop that in the chat window here.
So number 1 is commitment.
Yeah, determination. And that's why I also read you the accounts of non-ejaculatory orgasm from those men, because I think it's hard to be committed to something if you don't know exactly what it is or how good it is.
We're goal focused. We want to know what's at the end of the rainbow.
Right. And that's why I'm going to lead you through this breathwork process in a moment, because it is the best way for your body to open and get an experience of a totally different kind of pleasure, a different state of consciousness. So you can start to get a glimmer of an idea, oh, this might be what it's like.
Right.
And hopefully motivate you.
Okay.
So I really recommend to take a decision at first, say like 2 weeks of non-ejaculation. You're still self-pleasuring. You're still having sex. You have got to keep moving your energy, but just start with 2 weeks and then see how your body feels. If you really, really need to, then let it, you know. But then eventually build it up to 40 days of not ejaculating at all. And that, you know, is a good length of time to start to change an ingrained habit. Then you can see, okay, I have the power to decide when I'm going to ejaculate. Then you can decide how long you want to go. And for a lot of men, it can take up to 6 months to really master this, to really get their body to fully come online.
I suck because I have so many questions.
Go ahead.
So there's people that obviously, a lot of people that believe in everything you just said, and then there's some people that I've talked to that say it's not about not ejaculating, It's about transmuting your sexual energy and being able to do that. But at the end, you can ejaculate. It's not going to hurt you to ejaculate. But I guess maybe what they're saying is when you reach that level where you're able to transmute your sexual energy, then it's okay because you're not necessarily depleting your life force in the same way.
Yeah.
Or is any ejaculating depleting of the life force that they talk about?
Well, okay, those are two separate things. First, I would just say that transmuting your sexual energy is such a subtle process. It might feel like nothing, or it might not feel very satisfying. And so I think it's very easy to fall off the wagon, fall off the horse, and to just stop doing it because it's so easy to go to ejaculation. And it's so much pleasure, like so much dopamine in our brain. We're kind of like addicted to it.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to go a lot faster and be more effective if in the beginning you can just go cold turkey for a little while to give yourself time, to give your body time to open up to the subtle energy of transmuting things.
Okay. That makes sense.
As far as the life force energy,
like I've heard, like when you're a teenager, it's one thing. In your 20s, you can ejaculate a few times a week. If you're in my age, you shouldn't be ejaculating more than once a month because the older you get, the more life energy you're sucking out.
So different spiritual traditions in the world have this teaching. The Hatha yogis, the Taoists, I'm sure there's more people that say that, a man should not be ejaculating all the time. And what I've found, so when I interviewed all of those men who had undertaken the task of never ejaculating, what they told me, almost 100% of them told me they felt so much more alive, so much happier, so much more energized, and they would never, ever go back. Like they had no longer any interest in ejaculating. It can change. Yeah. It can change you so profoundly when you start to notice like how depleted your body got after ejaculating. But I want to say that I think it depends on the man, because then there were some men that said, actually, I didn't feel any different. And I feel super awake and energized after I ejaculate. So like men are not a monolithic entity, and our bodies are complex and diverse. And so I think you need to decide what works for you. I don't think you don't need to follow someone else's guidelines unless you're like a full deep Taoist practitioner and you want to do exactly what they say.
So there's no evidence that there's literally like you're robbing years off your life if you ejaculate a lot. There's no medical evidence, if you will, but there's esoteric beliefs that's true.
Right, exactly. Some people say it robs you of your energy to create and to live a long life, but look at all of the incredible music and poetry and whatever we have that has come out of Europe and during the past few hundred years. And I don't think all of those men were practicing these practices.
They did all right for themselves. Yeah, because sometimes I feel like I am like, and I do. I can recognize when it's depleting, and I think that there's something to be said about not ejaculating every time, and learning how to transmute. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. And because you also have like, I'm going off on a tangent here and I'll stop, but like say that if men that ejaculate more often or have sex more often reduce their risk of prostate cancer significantly, because they're using the system, and it just kind of like it kind of correlates to breast cancer. If women don't breastfeed, then they're higher likelihood to have breast cancer too.
So the thing about those studies, and again, I encourage everyone to go and read the studies on your own and don't take my word for it. But the medical establishment is so far behind on this. What they were studying was the comparison of people who have sex, assuming that sex always equals ejaculation, versus monks, like people who don't self-pleasure, who never have sex. Okay. It was like unfathomable to them that there could be a population of men who don't ejaculate, but who regularly have sex and self-pleasure, right? So when you do those processes, you're activating a lot of systems in your body of pleasure, of movement, of things that would be different than if you were a monk and never ever having sex and never having the hormonal and the energy connection with a partner.
Right, right. It's always, the studies are always like they miss a piece. They think they're controlling all the variables, and you're a scientist, so you know, if you don't control all the variables, it's not a strong study. It kind of makes me think of like, again, I don't care what people do, but like vegetarians say don't eat meat. There's studies that meat cause cancer and so on and so forth. Well, yeah, but what about organic grass-fed meat as opposed to the rest of the meat that's full of hormones and chemicals and stuff like that? So,
Yeah.
you know, like that's like the piece that might be missing, similarly to what you just said.
Yeah. So they haven't done the right comparison in my mind.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't want anyone to get prostate cancer. And, you know, I think as with everything, you need to listen to your body and really find a balance. And, you know, if you're going to take it to extremes, that's an inherently risky thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, use your discernment.
For sure. All right. So number one, we got to stay determined.
Okay. So point number two, and this is essential. You can't do it without this in my mind. I mean, in my experience, is to develop a conscious self-pleasure practice where every single day you do 30 minutes of self-pleasure without ejaculating. And in this process, you have got to find your unique system of what works best for you to move your energy up. So basically, you're going to be edging yourself, repeatedly going toward the edge, and then figuring out, is it muscles? Is it sounding? Is it breath? Is it relaxing? Is it just using your mind? Or some combination thereof? What is it that works for you to bring you back from the edge? Say if 1 is you're not hard and 10 is you're ejaculating. If you take yourself to 9, 9.5, 9.9, and repeatedly bring yourself back down, what works best for that? Mm-hmm. And so this is a process that I take my clients through in my one-on-one coaching. I have a series of guided audios where I help you go through in a systematic way, each of these variables and develop your own tool. But that's the general outline of what to do. So let me put that in the chat box. And it sounds like you're already doing that.
I am, not regularly. I'm not the best at it, but I do breath work, and during my breath work, I have a self-pleasure practice.
Awesome.
So I kind of combine breath work and meditation and self-pleasure.
I love that. That's advanced. Okay, the point number 3 is to get healthy. So this is one of the secret benefits of developing full body orgasms. You have got to bring awareness to all the aspects of your life, because like, what are you eating? You know, how are you exercising? How are you sleeping? Because in order for your energy to start to move up through your body, your channels have to be open. Your body has to be in good enough shape to allow it to flow. So it's really time to take stock of your life and be like, okay, how much of a priority have I been putting on my sexual mastery? Have I just been totally ignoring it and ignoring my physical health? And it's not just physical health, but your mental well-being as well, you know? So that's a big one, and there's all kinds of different ways to do that. But basically, you need to really take stock of how healthy you are. I put that in the chat window.
I don't know that it's coming up for me. I'm not sure if anybody else is seeing it. I wonder if it's coming up in the host chat.
Oh, yeah.
In the host chat. I wonder if there's a way to copy it. Let's see if I can do it. I can't. Are you able to copy it on your end?
I will try. Oh, darn. No, but I'll just copy it from here, from my notes.
And just put it in. You can see how there's the public area. Can you type in there?
Oh, I can't. I can't type in there.
Okay. Well, you can put it in there afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So getting healthy diet, exercise, you just got to level up because that all is intertwined.
Yes. Oh, and I see Leah made a comment a while ago. She said, I would imagine it's challenging for partners to detach from their man's ejaculation as a sign of satisfaction with the connection. Absolutely. This is the main pushback I get from men around this. I myself had that. I really wanted my man to ejaculate. And so I'll be talking about that at the end, where I talk about how your partner can support you in this practice.
Okay. So that's number 3.
So number 4 is so if you have stopped ejaculating, you have got to give that energy somewhere to go, or it's gonna or your body's gonna freak out and you're gonna it'll come out the same way it always has. So you have to have some kind of energy moving practice in your life, whether it's breath work, qigong, intense yoga, martial arts, something where you work with the subtle energy of your body and you constantly move it around, move it up, let it flow.
I love how you say subtle. Subtle energy.
Subtle. Thanks. That word, it's such a strange word.
It is, right? How do you get that out? Subtle.
Yeah, I just ignore the B.
Oh.
And point number 5 is you need to have a supportive partner. So you're going to have to sit down and have a talk with your partner about this, why it's so important to you, and how he or she or they can support you. And I'll go through the points of how they can do that. There's some really fun ways of how your partner can support you at the end. So I think right now what I want to do is take you into the breathwork, Shai. How do you feel about that?
I feel good, but it dawned on me, and because you're so much fun to talk to and geek out on this stuff with, that we're at almost 42 minutes. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to stop this and I'm going to create a part 2 so that people can at least, if they want to see it in 2 different segments, I have a feeling the next is probably going to be another 30 minutes or so, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I just love talking to you and asking you questions.
I love it, yeah.
Your wisdom is awesome. All right, so I'm going to stop this, guys, and we're going to go and create a part 2, and we'll be right back. Catch you guys on the other side.